Hello and welcome to Big Bang Radio Spotlights. This is a show where we talk to independent artists all around the world about their music and the process for making it. I'm Isaac Anderson, and today I got to sit down with Greg from the Seattle alt-rock band 627. And without any further ado, here's the interview. What is 627?
Well, 627 is a brainchild that for me started out as a demo where I played all of the instruments, and then after we got a little traction on the internet, I decided that I wanted to start playing some live shows. So I enlisted two of my brothers and one of my best friends to be part of the live show lineup. And before we knew it, we were in the studio recording an album and then another one. And so now we're kind of cemented as a group, and we write together as opposed to me by myself. But that's kind of how it started.
Very nice. Well, you personally, do you remember kind of like what was the spark that really kind of got you into music? Usually, like, there's always kind of one thing that really kind of makes people think, yeah, this is really what I want to do.
Well, as a young kid, I have an older brother, Jason, who plays guitar in my band, and he was 2 years older than me, so he started playing in bands and going to shows a little bit before me. He was in high school, and I was still a bit too young to enjoy some of those things or to at least have permission to go. So I started playing music with him at home, and my dad, I think really the catalyst was that my dad always had a guitar in the house, and it was one of the few things of his that we were actually allowed to use. We weren't allowed to touch his tools, we weren't allowed to touch his TV, but for some strange reason, he didn't care if we played the guitar. So I think it gave some incentive to us to practice and pursue that because it felt cool to be able to use something that belonged to my dad.
So obviously you've been playing for quite a while. I imagine you've probably been in bands before this band. Do you remember what your first band was like?
Yeah, I think my first legit band was called Wheelchair in high school, and it was a three-piece band. I played bass and I sang, and we did a lot of parties and stuff at the high school, but we really weren't playing like club shows because I was still pretty young at that time. And then after that band sort of dissolved, my brother Jason and I formed the band Five Hoss Cartwrights in the late 90s, and we actually put out a record called Bash It Out on Mothership Records, which I just re-released on Dub 7 Records. So that was kind of cool to be able to put that music out and get it on Spotify in the digital age. But that band was cool because we got to do a lot of touring. That was like my first legit, real professional band where we were playing shows like at that time, the Rock Candy in Seattle and the Off Ramp. We got to tour with No Means No from Canada, which is one of my all-time favorite punk bands. So yeah, that was really when I started to get serious at 19, and I'm 41 now. So I have never really outgrown this phase in my life.
Yeah, so most everybody knows that Seattle is kind of the hotbed for like the grunge era back in the 90s, and has a lot of really awesome bands coming from it, like Death Cab for Cutie. Nirvana was probably the biggest one, Soundgarden, the list goes on and on and on. So I imagine you take a lot of influences from just the Seattle area in general. How is the music scene now compared to how it was back in the 90s?
Well, back in the 90s, it was a bit more vibrant in terms of the support that the bands were giving one another. I think that really that's the thing that that really made it go, was the fact that on Monday night, the bands that were playing on Tuesday night came and stood in the audience and supported the bands that were playing, and the following night, all the bands Sunday watched bands that were performing on Tuesday, and then eventually other people just started to catch on that the shows were crowded and really, really fun, and it started to attract people that maybe weren't playing in the scene, and I think that's really what sort of bubbled the thing to the surface. And so that's kind of what we're trying to do here with the label, is I try to find bands that I can record locally that are not maybe in the position to do that for themselves, and then in exchange we all kind of just ride the same wave. And so I'm hoping that that's what happens here. But in terms of influences, I mean, the first time I really learned to play someone else's guitar part was after hearing Keep It Out of My Face by Mudhoney. I used to spend hours sitting on the couch trying to figure out that stupid down, that little riff that they do at the beginning. And that's kind of what kicked it off. And then I got into recording music, and I started following Jack Endino, who recorded Bleach for Nirvana, and it was cool because he actually recorded our first record, Some Other's Day, that we recorded in April of 2016. And he had just done a Soundgarden record at the same studio and was peeling the tape off of the soundboard that had all of the faders marked for what Soundgarden's tracks were. And he peeled that off and stuck that tape on the door and put some tape down, and then our name went on there. So that was pretty cool. And what's even cooler than that is from that time forward in the last 2.5 years, I've actually become pretty good personal friends with Jack Endino, who at one time was like a hero to me.
Did you ever ask him any questions about Bleach?
No, you're not allowed to talk to him about Nirvana. It's
Really?
one of the things you don't bring up. Yeah. If you spend any time, he has a whole website that is dedicated to the things you're not supposed to talk to him about. And it is littered with Nirvana trivia. So actually, that is a topic that in the 3 years that we have been friends, I have never discussed with him.
So you talked a little bit about how you also like recording music and producing and whatnot. When you're recording with your own band, do you find it hard to kind of separate yourself from your producer brain, or do you kind of like you try to get into producer brain mode when you're recording your own band?
It's extremely difficult actually to be that heavily invested into a project from so many different angles. I mean, it's my label that's handling the release. It's my studio that's doing the recording. It's my mixes that are going out for mastering. They're my songs that I wrote. I played on them. There isn't any part of it that could be rejected that wouldn't be attached to me personally. So you really have to have thick skin when you start shopping something like that around for radio airplay or magazines or any sort of promotion that someone else is going to invest in, and they look at you and they say, yeah, this isn't right for this reason or that reason or that reason. It's not the right fit for this opportunity. But every one of those reasons are tied to me emotionally. So I think that's the biggest difficulty is just being like, all right, well, I realize I'm invested on every level of this, but I also realize that I have some limitations in my ability and that I'm going to receive criticism or critical input on probably every one of those facets. You just have to be, you don't get into this business if you have sensitive feelings.
No, you don't. So I know you said the band is a pretty collaborative experience. As far as the way you guys write songs, do you mind sharing with us kind of like how the process goes for you guys?
Yeah, well, originally, like I said, some of the songs were on a demo that I had sort of written out and recorded myself and been through that whole process alone. And so for them, it was like, oh, I'm just going to play this because it fits and it's what I can do. But now that we've kind of progressed into writing new material and we're actually working on a third album, it's been a lot more fun to write the songs, because usually what happens is somebody shows up to practice, and while somebody's using the bathroom or taking a break, one of the guys will start jamming on a riff and somebody else will join in. And then the guy that's not in the room has to run back in the room because he hears what's going on. And he's like, I'm missing out. Usually it's me. So I have to run back in the room, pick up my guitar, and I start sort of, jamming along to the riff. And then eventually I'll begin blurting out random words and random melodies. And usually what happens is there will be one line that will come out by accident, but the melody will be right and it'll be a nice hook. And then once that sort of gets sunk into my lip, then I'm on the line, and then it's kind of like a lyrical game of Scrabble. You just build line by line by line off of that one good thing that came out, and then everything just kind of gets connected to the idea of the song. What it means, what it's talking about is usually all kind of comes from one line that randomly just works for whatever reason. And then everybody's like, we like that. And then you just kind of keep going back to that well.
Sweet. So, first off, thank you again for talking to us. Before we kind of wrap this up and get your social media and whatnot, your album artwork, it's really, really interesting. I've never seen artwork like this, in case you guys can't see it. It's really nice, it feels like a very kind of organic, kind of hand-drawn thing. It reminds me a lot of kind of like the early Sub Pop stuff from the 90s. I don't know. I don't know who does
That's
that
cool.
artwork?
Thank you.
What influences that?
So I'm a big Dinosaur Jr. fan, and one of the things that I always thought was cool about Dinosaur Jr. growing up is that there seemed to be like a theme to all of their cover art that transcended just one album, but like you might see 3 or 4 albums in a row where the cover art has a particular feel to it. And maybe those are just phases that he went through in time or what have you. So it's hard to say whether I'll stick with this idea forever. But for the first 2 records, those are both hand-drawn pictures that I drew myself. I had some help on the first one from our original drummer, Dave, who's also an incredible artist. He's no longer in my band. So the second one I did all by myself, but I tried to do along a similar theme. I like the pen and ink, and I like the colored pencil style art. Personally, I like to do that. And then I don't know if you noticed, but there's a few common themes between the 2 album covers. They're both a similar perspective where you're kind of at the foot of the table looking towards the door. So there's a certain perspective that they both share. And so I think that was something I tried to capture. And then the other thing that I tried to make use of is like there's a little toe tag on the body that says 627. And if you look, that same tag is hanging from the tree or the plant on the first album cover. And then like the name 627 is hidden in the reflection of the morgue cabinets above the body on the second album. And the name 627 is hidden in the leaves of the plant on the first
I can
album.
see that now.
And
yeah,
then,
it's crazy. Look at that.
Yeah, and they both have the dripping paint that is where the album name Some Other's Day on one, and then Already Gone Dead on the table, sort of dripping paint or dripping blood. So it's like a common theme. Both of the album covers do look really similar, but quite a bit different color schemes.
No,
But I have an
really
idea for the third one already that we're working on now, which I believe the third album is going to be called Small Craft Advisory, and I have a nice little picture I'm working on for that.
I can't wait to see it now. I mean, that's super creative. I mean, you don't really see a whole lot of stuff like that anymore, especially now in the digital age. There's just something about like the kind of organic quality to something you did with your hands, and something that had that much thought put into it with like, you know, all the little hidden features that you talked about. That just like screams really
Right, and it
interesting.
literally is hand drawn on a piece of paper with a pen.
To me, that's really engaging. I really like that. That really like it tells me, like, it gives me a feeling that like I can really almost start hearing the music when I see that photo. So
Right, and you can also, it ties back to my explanation about how invested I am in every facet of this. If someone doesn't like the cover art, it's even my fault.
It's all good, man. It's all good. It's good. I'm glad that you're this involved. But again, thank you so much for interviewing with us. Where can people find you online?
Well, we're on Facebook at 627 SixTwoSeven, followed by 627 the numbers. So it'll be 627 spelled out and then 627 on the end. That's our Facebook handle. That's our Twitter handle. That's also our Instagram handle. You can find our music on Spotify, Bandcamp, SoundCloud, iTunes, Google, Amazon, everywhere. Wherever you like to find music, just type in SixTwoSeven, all one word, and you will find us, even on the Google. You can even find us on Wikipedia, for crying out loud.
Very nice. Well, cool. And before we wrap this up, I got one more question for you, and this is more of a personal question for me. We do a show here at 89.1 and Big Bang Radio called Big Bang Cinema. It's a show that I host. It's all about, you know, like the name suggests, it's all about movies. And I'm a huge movie fan, and I love the kind of art of cinema, and I kind of feel like it's not too many worlds away from what people do as musicians. So I'm just curious, do you have a favorite movie?
No, it's not. I do. You're probably going to laugh because my 3 favorite movies are really stupid. I really love the movie Dumb and Dumber. I really love the movie Let's Go to Prison with Dax Shepard. And then I guess on a serious note, I really dig the movie Heat. That's one of my all-time favorite movies. I could watch that movie over and over and over again.
Heat's a great one. Dumb and Dumber's too. I've never seen the Let's Go to Prison, the Dax Shepard one, so.
No, you have to put that on your list. It's fantastic. I also really love Hot Rod and Napoleon Dynamite too.
Sounds like you like
Gives
comedies.
you an idea of, yeah, I kind of like to shut off my brain if I'm going to sit down in front of the TV.
Thanks again to Greg for sitting down with me and talking all about 627's music. If you guys want to see more interviews just like this, you can go to facebook.com/Studio67NCC, youtube.com/NashComCollege, or if you're in the Nashville, Tarboro, or Rocky Mount area, you can listen to 89.1 Big Bang Radio. I'm Isaac Anderson, and until next time, stay lovely.